A Father's Day gift, a terrified wife, a mysterious box, and a family secret buried for over 30 years that could cost a daughter her life. Watch until the end, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more unforgettable stories.
It was supposed to be a peaceful Father's Day. The morning sunlight spilled through the kitchen window while I sat quietly with a cup of coffee, pretending not to notice that my phone had remained silent all morning. No calls, no messages, no cheerful "Happy Father's Day, Dad." I told myself it didn't matter. Children grow up, they get busy, life moves on. At least that's what I kept repeating in my head. My wife, Eleanor, was making pancakes in the kitchen. She glanced at me several times but didn't say anything. After 38 years of marriage, she had learned to recognize the smile I wore whenever I was hiding disappointment. Then, around 11 in the morning, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Outside stood a delivery driver holding a medium brown box wrapped with a bright blue ribbon. Package for Mr. Daniel Carter. I signed for it. The sender's name immediately caught my attention. Emily, my daughter. For the first time that morning, I smiled. "She remembered," I whispered. I carried the package inside like it was something precious. Eleanor looked at the label from across the room. Her smile on her face disappeared instantly. "Daniel?" Her voice was unusually serious. "Don't open it." I laughed softly. "What are you talking about?" "I'm serious." I frowned. "It's Father's Day. It's obviously a gift." She slowly walked toward me, her eyes fixed on the box instead of me. Then she said something that made my heart skip. "Can't you see?" I looked back at the package. "I don't understand." She pointed toward the shipping label. At first glance, everything looked normal. My name, our address, Emily's return address. Nothing seemed strange. Then I noticed something. The tape. It had already been cut once. Someone had opened the box and sealed it again. A cold feeling ran down my spine. "Maybe the shipping company inspected it," I said, trying to sound calm. Eleanor didn't answer. Instead, she leaned closer and pointed to another detail. There was a tiny red mark near the corner, almost invisible, like someone had drawn a small dot with a permanent marker. "I've seen that before," she whispered. "What do you mean?" She looked nervous. "Remember the news report last winter?" I searched my memory. She continued. "They were warning people about suspicious packages being resealed after being tampered with." I swallowed. Now the package didn't feel like a Father's Day gift anymore. It felt heavy, too heavy. I gently lifted it. There was almost no movement inside, no sound, no shifting, just weight. "What if we're overthinking this?" I asked. Eleanor folded her arms. "What if we're not?" Silence filled the room. I stared at Emily's handwriting on the label. It looked genuine. She had always written my name exactly the same way. Still, something felt wrong. Very wrong. I reached for the ribbon. Eleanor grabbed my wrist. "No." I looked into her eyes. She wasn't afraid. She was certain. That difference changed everything. "What do you want me to do?" She took a slow breath. "Call Emily first." I picked up my phone. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. No answer. Again? Nothing. A strange knot formed in my stomach. Emily never ignored my calls, especially not on Father's Day. I opened our family group chat. The last message from her was 3 days ago. Just a picture of her garden. Nothing unusual. I typed quickly. "Sweetheart, we received your package. Call us when you can." Seen? No. Delivered? No. That was odd. She always had her phone nearby. Eleanor quietly moved the box onto the dining table. Neither of us touched it. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The room suddenly felt smaller. I kept staring at that tiny red dot. The more I looked at it, the more it seemed intentional, almost like a warning. Then,
something happened that neither of us expected. A faint sound. Click. Both of us froze. "Did you hear that?" Eleanor nodded without taking her eyes off the package. Another sound, very soft, almost impossible to hear. Click, click. It wasn't coming from outside. It wasn't the refrigerator. It wasn't the clock. It was coming from inside the box. Every instinct told me to step back. My breathing became shallow. "This isn't normal," I whispered. Eleanor had already picked up her phone. "I'm calling the police." I almost stopped her. Part of me still believed this was some ridiculous misunderstanding. Maybe it was a music box, maybe a toy, maybe something battery-powered that turned on itself. But then, the clicking stopped. The silence that followed was somehow even more terrifying. The dispatcher answered. Eleanor calmly explained everything. The opened tape, the strange mark, the sounds from inside, our inability to reach Emily. The operator didn't laugh, didn't dismiss our concerns. Instead, she asked one question. "Has anyone opened the package?" "No." "Good. Please leave the house immediately." The seriousness in her voice erased every doubt I had left. We stepped outside without another word. Standing across the street, I looked back at my own home. The Father's Day gift was still sitting alone on our dining table. Through the front window, I could barely see it. Completely still, completely silent. Neighbors began noticing something was wrong. Mrs. Jenkins from next door slowly walked towards us. "Everything all right?" Before I could answer, Eleanor quietly shook her head. "Please stay back." Within minutes, the sound of sirens echoed through the neighborhood. A police cruiser stopped in front of our house, then another. Officers approached carefully. One of them asked me several questions while another spoke into a radio. No one entered the house immediately. Instead, they stretched yellow tape around part of the yard. I never imagined Father's Day ending like this. The officer looked directly at me. "Sir, did your daughter personally tell you she was sending this package?" "No." "When was the last time you spoke with her?" 4 days ago." He wrote something down. His expression changed ever so slightly. Not panic, not relief, just concern. Then another vehicle arrived. Not a regular police car, a larger truck with specialized equipment. An officer wearing protective gear stepped out. I felt my chest tighten. I kept asking myself the same question. What could possibly be inside a gift from my own daughter that required this kind of response? And an even frightening question slowly formed in my mind. What if Emily never sent the package at all? The bomb squad officer slowly walked toward the front door, while the rest of us stood behind the police tape, holding our breath. Every movement was careful. Every second felt longer than the last. The neighborhood had fallen completely silent. Even the children who had been playing outside were now watching from their windows. I had never seen so many police officers outside my home before. One officer approached me again. "Mr. Carter, I need you to think carefully. Has your daughter ever mentioned someone threatening her?" I shook my head. "Never. Emily doesn't like worrying people. Even when she's struggling, she hides it behind a smile." He nodded but didn't write anything this time. Instead, he looked toward the house. "I hope that's still true." Those words stayed in my head. Hope she's still? Why would he say that? Before I could ask another question, the bomb squad officer in protective gear reached the dining room window and carefully looked inside using a small camera attached to a long pole. Another officer watched the live video feed on a monitor. No one spoke. Suddenly, the officer holding the monitor raised his hand. "Stop!" Everyone froze. The bomb technician slowly backed away from the window. The officer whispered something into his radio. Within seconds, everyone stepped even farther back. My heart started racing. "What is it?" I asked. No one answered. Then the lead officer finally walked toward us. "We've detected electronic components inside the package." I felt the ground disappear beneath my feet. Electronic components. That could mean anything. A toy, a music player, or something much worse. "Can you tell what it is?" I asked. "Not yet." Eleanor quietly grabbed my hand. Her fingers were ice cold. The bomb technician brought out a small robotic vehicle from the truck. It rolled slowly across the front yard before climbing the porch steps. Watching a robot enter my own home felt unreal. I kept staring through the living room window. That box. Just an hour ago, I had been smiling because my daughter remembered Father's Day. Now it was surrounded by police robots. Life can change that quickly. The robot reached the dining table, its mechanical arm extended carefully toward the package. Every officer watched the screen. The arm gently lifted one corner of the lid without fully opening it. Everyone leaned closer. Then the video feed suddenly filled with static. The screen went black. What happened? Signal interference. The technician quickly restarted the monitor. Nothing. Still black. The robot wasn't responding anymore. A heavy silence spread through the crowd. One officer quietly muttered, "That's not normal." My stomach tightened. Minutes later, the robot finally reconnected. The picture returned. The box hadn't moved, but something else had. The ribbon. It had lying on the table. None of us had seen it fall. The technician frowned. I never touched the ribbon. Every officer exchanged nervous glances. The lead officer made a decision. No one goes inside. Just then, my phone rang. Emily. I answered before the first ring ended. "Emily!" There was no response, only breathing, soft, uneven, almost like someone was trying not to cry. "Emily, sweetheart, are you okay?" Silence. Then I heard her whisper, "Dad." Her voice sounded weak. "Emily, where are you?" "Dad." The line crackled. "Please, I'm here. Tell me what's happening." Another long pause. Then she spoke 4 words that chilled every person standing near me. "I didn't send it." My knees nearly gave out. "What?" "I didn't send the box." Eleanor covered her mouth. The officer beside me immediately activated the speakerphone. "Emily, listen carefully," I said. "Who sent it?" The signal broke again. "Emily, I don't know." Her breathing became faster. "I came home yesterday. Someone was inside my apartment." "What?" "They were looking for something." The police officers immediately began recording the call. Emily continued. "They kept asking about you." "About me?" "Yes. They kept asking whether you still had—" The connection became distorted. "The file." "What file?" "I don't know." Then suddenly she screamed, "Dad!" The call disconnected. "No!" I immediately called back. Her phone was switched off. The officer took my phone. "We're tracing the last signal." I couldn't think straight anymore. Someone had broken into my daughter's apartment. Someone had sent a mysterious package to my house. And whoever they were, they wanted something connected to me. But what? I was 70 years old, retired. My life was ordinary, or so I believed. The lead detective looked directly into my eyes. "Mr. Carter." "Yes?" "You mentioned you retired 12 years ago." "That's right. What exactly did you do before retirement?" I hesitated. "I worked for the Federal Archives." "What department?" "I handled document preservation." He remained silent. Then he asked another question. "Did you ever work on classified material?" I laughed nervously. "Occasionally, but nothing important." He didn't laugh back. Instead, he asked quietly, "Are you absolutely certain?" That question unlocked a memory buried deep inside my mind. 31 years ago, a locked storage room, a sealed metal case, several government officials, a document that everyone treated as if it could change lives. I remembered signing confidentiality papers. I remember being told never to discuss that assignment. Most importantly, I remember taking something home by accident, only for one night. The next morning I returned it, or at least I thought I had. A strange feeling crept over me. What if something had been left behind? The detective noticed my change in expression. "You remembered something." I slowly nodded. "I'm not sure."
What is it? It happened decades ago. Tell me everything. Before I could answer, another police vehicle pulled into the street at high speed. A young officer jumped out carrying a tablet. He hurried straight toward the detective. Sir, what is it? We just searched the sender's tracking information. And the package wasn't mailed from Emily's city. I felt my heartbeat stop. It was mailed from... The officer looked at the screen one more time. Less than 15 miles from here. Eleanor stared at me. So whoever sent it already knew where we lived. The detective slowly looked around the neighborhood. His expression became much darker. I don't think they're far away. Without realizing it, I turned toward the row of houses across the street. Curtains moved. Someone quickly stepped away from a window. For just a split second, I had the terrifying feeling that whoever sent the package wasn't hiding in another city. They were watching us right now.
The detective immediately ordered 2 officers across the street. Check every house with a clear view of Mr. Carter's front door. Knock on every door. If someone refuses to answer, note the address. The officers hurried away. I couldn't take my eyes off the window where I thought I had seen the curtain move. Maybe it was just my imagination. Maybe it wasn't. The detective turned back to me. Mr. Carter, from this moment on, assume someone has been watching you for days, possibly weeks. The sentence hit me harder than I expected. Watching me? Why? I lived a simple life. Every Tuesday I bought groceries. Every Thursday I met old friends for coffee. Every Sunday I attended church with Eleanor. There was nothing special about my routine. Unless someone believed there was. The bomb technician's radio suddenly crackled. "We're going in." Everyone became silent again. This time, the technician controlled a second robot, one equipped with a high-resolution camera and a mechanical cutter. Slowly, carefully, the machine reached the dining table. Its arm gripped the lid. Another arm held a portable X-ray scanner over the package. Seconds later, a strange image appeared on the monitor. I didn't understand what I was looking at, but the technicians did. One of them quietly whispered, "There's another box inside." The detective frowned. "What kind?" "Metal." My heartbeat quickened. "A metal box?" The technician nodded. "And it's locked." Eleanor looked confused. "Who sends a locked metal box as a Father's Day gift?" No one answered. The technician zoomed in further. Inside the metal container appeared several rectangular objects stacked neatly together. Not wires, not explosives, at least not obviously. The tension eased slightly. The lead technician finally spoke. "We're no longer convinced this is a bomb." I released a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "But," he continued, "we still don't know what it is." The detective gave permission to continue. Using delicate tools, the slow robot slowly removed the outer cardboard box. Inside sat a small black metal case. It looked old, very old. There was no brand, no markings, only one thing engraved on the front. A single silver letter. D. The detective looked at me. "Does that mean anything?" I stared at it. The letter seemed familiar. Too familiar. Then another forgotten memory surfaced. 31 years ago, the storage room, the sealed government container. Every case had a letter engraved on the front. Mine had been marked with the letter D. A chill ran through my entire body. "No," I whispered. "It can't be." The detective immediately noticed my reaction. "You've seen this before." "I think so." "When?" "More than 30 decades ago." The detective didn't interrupt. I took a deep breath. I worked on a temporary archival project involving sealed evidence recovered from several federal investigations. Every container had a coded letter. "And yours?" "D." The detective looked back toward the metal case. "If that's true, someone has spent 30 years looking for something." Before anyone could respond, another officer came running from across the street. "Sir, what is it?" "We found a witness."
An elderly woman from the opposite house slowly walked towards us. She looked nervous. The detective spoke gently. "What did you see?" She pointed towards my house. "Yesterday evening, a white delivery van stopped outside. Did anyone get out?" "Yes, a man wearing a delivery uniform." "Did he deliver anything?" She shook her head. "No. He just stood near the mailbox for a few minutes." "Then what?" He looked around, almost as if he was making sure no one was watching. My stomach tightened. "Did you see his face?" "Not clearly, but," she hesitated, "he wasn't alone." "What do you mean?" "There was someone sitting inside the van. A woman." The detective quickly wrote everything down. Then he asked, "Did you notice anything else?" The old woman thought for several seconds. Finally, she nodded. "The woman never stopped looking at your house." The detective thanked her before turning to another officer. "Find every security camera within 3 blocks." The investigation was moving quickly now, but the questions were multiplying faster than the answers. Who were those people? Why had they watched my house? Why wait until Father's Day? And why use Emily's name? Just then, my phone vibrated again. This time, it wasn't Emily. It was an unknown number. The detective immediately motioned for silence. I answered carefully. "Hello?" A calm male voice replied. "Happy Father's Day, Mr. Carter." Every officer around me stiffened. I didn't recognize the voice. "Who is this?" "You've aged well." "What do you want?" A short laugh came through the speaker. "I want what's mine." "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do." "I don't." The man remained silent for several seconds. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. "You kept it longer than anyone expected." "I never kept anything." "Really? Then why are the police standing outside your house?" I looked around. How did he know that? He could see us. He was close. Very close. The detective quietly whispered, "Keep him talking." I swallowed. "What exactly do you think I have?" "The Black Ledger." "I've never heard of it." Another laugh. "You'll remember." The line went silent. Then the man spoke again. "Open the metal case." The detective immediately shook his head. I ignored the instruction. "I can't." "Oh, you can." "No. If you don't," his voice became colder, "your daughter dies." Every muscle in my body froze. Eleanor burst into tears. "What have you done to Emily?" The caller didn't answer directly. Instead, he calmly said, "She's still alive. For now." The detective immediately signaled the phone tracking team. Another officer counted silently with his fingers. 10 seconds. 20. 30. The detective mouthed one word. "Almost." The caller suddenly laughed. "You won't trace this phone." Click. The line disconnected. The detective lowered his head in frustration. He knew exactly how long to stay connected. I could barely breathe anymore. Emily was alive, at least according to him. But where? And who was this man? The bomb technician interrupted everyone. "Sir," the detective turned, "we've managed to unlock the outer mechanism." The entire street became silent once more. The robotic arm slowly rotated the lock. A loud metallic click echoed from inside the house. The lid of the black case lifted, only a fraction of an inch, just enough for everyone watching the monitor to notice something unexpected. It wasn't filled with money. It wasn't weapons. It wasn't electronics. Inside, there was only a single faded photograph lying on top of several yellowed envelopes. The technician zoomed the camera closer. The detective stared at the screen, then slowly turned towards me. His face had completely changed. "Mr. Carter?" "Yes?" "I think the man in this photograph is you." The detective stared at the monitor for several long seconds before looking back at me. "Mr. Carter, are you certain you've never seen this photograph? I can't tell from here." The technician zoomed in again. The picture was faded with age. The edges were torn.
It showed 4 people standing beside an old government building. One of them was clearly me. Only, I looked 30 years younger. My hair was dark, my shoulders were straighter, and I was smiling. I couldn't remember the last time I had seen that smile. But it wasn't me in the photograph that terrified me. It was the 3 people standing beside me. I didn't recognize any of them. Not anymore. The detective noticed the confusion on my face. "You don't remember them?" I should." He nodded slowly. "Memory doesn't always disappear. Sometimes it just hides until something forces it back." I kept staring at the screen. Then, like a flash of lightning, one face came back to me. A tall man with silver glasses. His name escaped me at first. Then suddenly, "Richard," I whispered. "Richard Hale." The detective immediately wrote the name down. "Who was he?" "My supervisor." "What happened to him?" "I don't know. He retired before I did. At least, that's what everyone believed." Another image surfaced inside my mind. Richard standing in front of the metal case marked with the letter D. His final words before leaving the archive. "If anyone ever asks about this case, you never saw it." At the time, I thought he was joking. Now, it didn't sound like a joke anymore. The technician carefully lifted the photograph from inside the metal case, using robotic fingers. Underneath were several yellow envelopes. Every envelope had the same symbol stamped in dark blue ink, a circle with 3 lines crossing through it. The detective frowned. Anyone recognize this symbol? No one answered. Except me. Not because I remembered what it meant, but because I'd seen it before, very briefly, on Richard's office door, 31 years ago. The detective looked at me again. "You know it? I've seen it. Where?" "I can't remember." "Try." I closed my eyes. The harder I tried, the more pieces returned. A locked office, a safe behind a painting, Richard placing those envelopes inside, then looking directly at me. "If anything ever happens to me, forget today." I opened my eyes. I think Richard was afraid. The detective crossed his arms. Afraid of who? I don't know. Before anyone could continue, another officer approached carrying a laptop. "Sir, we found something." "What?" "We ran facial recognition on the old photograph, and it identified one person." Everyone leaned closer. The man standing beside Mr. Carter, Richard Hale, was officially declared dead 28 years ago. Silence. Complete silence. I looked at the detective. If he died, who called me? The detective didn't answer, because he couldn't. The timing was impossible. Then the officer added something even stranger. The death certificate exists, but there was never a body. My chest tightened. No body? Then was he really dead? Or had someone wanted the world to believe he was? The technician interrupted again. "There's something beneath the envelopes." The camera moved lower. Hidden under the stack was a small brass key, old, worn. Attached to it was a faded paper tag. The detective read it aloud. "Locker 217. Everyone exchanged confused looks. What locker? The tag didn't say. No location, no address, only 2 words, Locker 217. Then the technician carefully lifted the final envelope. The bottom of the metal case was finally visible. There, folded neatly, was a handwritten letter. Across the front, in dark ink, were 6 words, "For Daniel Carter only." No one spoke. The detective looked at me. "This letter is addressed to you." I nodded. "But we don't know if it's safe." The bomb technician scanned it carefully. No explosives, no chemicals, just paper. The detective thought for a moment, then made a decision. The robot will open it. The mechanical fingers unfolded the letter with incredible care. The paper was yellow with age. The handwriting looked familiar, painfully familiar. I recognized it before the technician even finished unfolding the page. Richard's handwriting. The detective began reading aloud. "Daniel, if you are reading this, it means I failed." My heartbeat echoed in my ears. Everything you were told about Case D was a lie. Eleanor squeezed my arm. The detective continued. "The object was never destroyed. Instead, it was hidden." Every officer stood perfectly still. "What you accidentally carried home
was not a mistake. I interrupted. That's impossible. The detective looked at me. You said you took something home by accident. Yes. The letter continued. I arranged it. I felt as if the world had stopped turning. Richard had planned it? Why? The detective read further. I trusted only one person, you. I couldn't breathe. I never told you because the fewer people who knew, the longer you would survive. My legs became weak. Eleanor squeezed my arm. What does this mean? I don't know. The detective kept reading. If anyone ever comes looking, never give them. The page suddenly ended. Everyone looked confused. The bottom half of the letter had been torn away. The most important sentence was missing. The detective immediately searched the metal case. Nothing. No missing page. No scraps. Someone had removed it long before the package reached us. The detective looked frustrated. They wanted you to know enough, but not everything. Another officer hurried towards us. Sir, what now? We've identified the white van. The detective turned. It was stolen 3 days ago. Any fingerprints? Wiped clean. Cameras? It disappeared after leaving this neighborhood. The detective sighed. Professional. Then my phone vibrated once again. This time, a text message. No number, no name, only a picture. I opened it slowly. The moment I saw the image, every drop of blood drained from my face. It was Emily. She was sitting in a chair. Her hands weren't visible. Behind her was a concrete wall. She looked frightened, but alive. At the bottom of the picture, one sentence had been typed. Bring the key to locker 217. Come alone, or your daughter never comes home. I looked at the brass key lying inside the metal case. For the first time, I realized this Father's Day gift had never been about the box. It had been about leading me to whatever waited behind the door of locker 217. And somehow, the people behind all of this already knew that sooner or later, I would have no choice but to go. The message stayed on my phone screen. Bring the key to locker 217. Come alone, or your daughter never comes home. I read it over and over, hoping the words would somehow change. They didn't. Eleanor looked at me with tears in her eyes. Daniel, we can't trust them. I know. If you go alone, I know. You may never come back. I couldn't answer, because she was right. The detective gently took my phone and handed it to the digital forensics team. We'll try to trace the message. One technician immediately shook his head. It was sent through an encrypted relay. No location, nothing. The detective sighed. They planned every step. He looked toward the black metal case. This wasn't just a delivery. It was an invitation. No, I quietly corrected him. It was a trap. He didn't disagree. The bomb technician carefully removed the brass key from the case. Instead of handing it to me, he placed it inside an evidence bag. The detective noticed my expression. Don't worry. No one is taking this without your permission. But until we know what we're dealing with, it stays protected. I nodded, though my thoughts were somewhere else. Emily. Was she frightened? Was she hurt? Had she eaten? Every parent knows that helpless feeling. The pain of not knowing is sometimes worse than the truth itself. One of the younger officers approached, carrying the old envelopes. Sir, what did you find? They're all sealed. No names? No addresses? The detective held one up to the light. Inside, something rectangular could barely be seen. Not papers, photographs. Every envelope seemed to contain one. He looked at me. Mr. Carter, did Richard ever give you personal files? No. Letters? Never. Photographs? I slowly shook my head. Nothing. The detective thought for a long moment before making another decision. We'll open only one. The envelope was carefully sliced open. A single photograph slid onto the table. The technician immediately enlarged it on the monitor. Everyone felt silent. It showed my house. Not today. Not yesterday, years ago. The trees were much smaller. The paint was different. Eleanor looked no older than 10. She was riding her bicycle in the driveway. Eleanor stood beside her laughing. I was washing my old pickup truck. Someone had taken the picture from across the street, without our knowledge, without our permission. My hands began shaking. "Whoever these people are," I whispered, "they've known about my family for decades." The detective looked disturbed. This photograph wasn't random. It was surveillance. He opened a second envelope. Another photograph. This one showed Emily walking home from middle school. She couldn't have been older than 13. The third photograph showed us leaving church one Sunday. The fourth, our 20th wedding anniversary. Every major moment of our lives, someone had been watching. The detective immediately ordered every remaining envelope sealed again. That's enough. The realization settled over everyone. This wasn't a crime that had started yesterday. It had started many years ago, perhaps before Emily even understood what danger meant. Suddenly, one officer called out, "Sir, look at the back." The detective turned the first photograph over. Written in neat blue ink was a date, June 14th, exactly 24 years ago. Below it, a short sentence, "Subject remains unaware." My entire body went cold. Subject. Not family, not Daniel. Subject, as if I had never been a person, only a target. The detective slowly looked at me. "I don't think you were ever the real objective." "What do you mean?" "I think someone wanted to reach something through you." I frowned. "What?" He glanced at the brass fee. "I think we're getting closer." Before anyone could continue, another police vehicle arrived. This time it wasn't local police. 2 men in dark suits stepped out. No uniforms, no badges visible, just black suits. The detective's expression immediately changed. He walked toward them. They spoke quietly for nearly 2 minutes. I couldn't hear a single word. When he returned, his face looked completely different. "What happened?" I asked. He hesitated. "They're from Washington." "FBI?" "They didn't say." "What do they want?" "The metal case." "No." The word came out before I even realized I had spoken. The detective looked surprised. "I'm sorry." I said no. "Mr. Carter, my daughter has been kidnapped. My family has been watched for decades, and now strangers arrive asking for the evidence? I want answers." For a moment, no one spoke. Then, to my surprise, the detective nodded. "I understand." He turned back toward the other 2 men. They clearly weren't happy with his response. One of them looked directly at me. His face remained expressionless. Then, he did something unexpected. He raised 2 fingers, tapped them lightly against his wrist, and walked away. The gesture lasted less than a second, but it unlocked another forgotten memory. Richard. He used the exact same signal whenever confidential conversations were nearby. I whispered to myself, "It's them." The detective heard me. What? They knew Richard. Before he could ask another question, my phone rang again. Another unknown number. The detective immediately placed the call on speaker. This time, no threats, no laughter, only an elderly woman's voice. "Daniel?" I know that voice. She sounded exhausted. "I don't have much time." "Who are you?" "My name won't help you, but Richard asked me to call if this day ever came." Every officer listened in complete silence. She continued, "Listen carefully. The key isn't for opening the locker." I frowned. "Then what's it for?" "It proves," the line crackled, "your identity." "My identity?" "You'll understand when you see the lock. What is inside locker 217? Silence. Then, the truth about your father." I felt as if the air had vanished. My father? He wasn't who you believed. No, that's impossible. "I'm sorry, Daniel. He loved you. He tried to protect you, but the secret survived longer than he did." My mind raced. My father had died 25 years earlier. He was a quiet mechanic, an ordinary man. At least, that's what I had always believed. The woman whispered one final sentence. When you open locker 217, you won't just find Emily, you'll find the reason your family has been hunted for more than 30 years. The call ended. No trace, no location, nothing. The detective slowly lowered the phone. Every officer looked at one another. No one knew what to say. I stared at the brass key inside the evidence bag. A simple old key, yet somehow it connected my missing daughter, Richard, the mysterious photographs, the black ledger, my late father, and a secret buried for more than 30 years. What frightened me most wasn't what I already knew. It was the growing realization that my entire life might have been built on a story that wasn't true. And somewhere beyond all those lies, Locker 217 was waiting.
I couldn't stop looking at the brass key. For years, it had existed somewhere in the shadows of my life, waiting for this exact moment. The detective gently placed a hand on my shoulder. "Mr. Carter, we can prepare a tactical team. You don't have to face this alone." I looked at him for a long moment before quietly replying, "If they believe I'm coming alone, then that's exactly what they need to believe." He understood immediately. A silent plan began to form. Within an hour, an unmarked vehicle carried me toward the old train station where Locker 217 was located. From the outside, it looked abandoned. The faded sign hung crooked above the entrance, and broken windows reflected the gray afternoon sky. To anyone passing by, it was just another forgotten building. But today, it felt like the center of every secret my family had ever carried. The detective handed me a tiny communication device. "You'll hear us. They won't." I nodded. "If anything feels wrong, I know. We come in." Eleanor held my hands tightly before I stepped out of the car. Her eyes were filled with fear. "Bring Emily home." I forced a smile. "I will." As I entered the station, dust floated through the sunlight breaking in from the cracked ceiling. The hallway was lined with old storage lockers. Most were rusted shut. Some had missing doors. At the far end, I saw it. Locker 217. It looked newer than the others, almost as if someone had been maintaining it. I slowly removed the brass key from my pocket. For a brief second, everything became quiet. No footsteps, no voices, only my heartbeat. The key slid perfectly into the lock. Just as the mysterious woman had said, the lock didn't immediately open. Instead, a small hidden panel clicked open beside it. Inside was a tiny fingerprint scanner. I stared in disbelief. The detective's voice whispered through the earpiece. She was right. This key identifies the owner. I placed my thumb on the scanner. A soft green light appeared. Then, the heavy lock released with a deep metallic sound. The door slowly opened. Inside wasn't money, or weapons, or classified files. There was only a small leather journal, a sealed envelope, and a flash drive. On top of everything rested another handwritten note. This one simply read, "Daniel, it's finally time." The handwriting was Richard's. My hands trembled as I opened the journal. The first page contained a single sentence. The greatest secret was never hidden in these files. It was hidden inside a family. Page after page revealed Richard's diary. He described an undercover investigation into a powerful criminal network that had infiltrated government offices decades earlier. Several honest officers had disappeared trying to expose it. One of them was my father. I stopped breathing. According to Richard, my father had never been an ordinary mechanic. After leaving government service, he deliberately chose a quiet life to protect our family. He changed jobs, changed cities, changed friends. He wanted us to grow up without ever knowing the dangers surrounding his past. Richard wrote one final sentence about him. "Your father gave up his identity so you could keep yours." Tears filled my eyes.
All my life I believed my father had lived an ordinary life because he lacked ambition. Now I understood. He had sacrificed everything so I could have a normal childhood. Just then, a voice echoed through the empty station. "I'm glad you finally came." I slowly turned around. A man stepped out from the shadows. Gray hair, silver glasses, the same face from the old photograph. Richard Hale, older but unmistakably alive. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, he smiled. "I'm sorry it had to happen this way, Daniel." I stared at him in disbelief. "You were supposed to be dead." I needed the world to believe that. "What about Emily?" "She's safe." I froze. "What?" "I never kidnapped her." He reached into his coat and handed me a phone. The screen lit up. Emily appeared in a live video call. "Dad!" Her eyes filled with tears. "Emily!" "I'm okay. They've been protecting me." I looked back at Richard. "What is happening?" Before he could answer, rapid footsteps echoed through the station. The detective's voice shouted through my earpiece, "Daniel, get down!" Gunshots exploded through the building. Several masked men rushed through the main entrance. Richard immediately pushed me behind a concrete pillar. They found us. The detective and his team stormed inside from the opposite side. The station erupted into chaos. Within minutes, the attackers were surrounded. One by one, they surrendered. Their leader tried to escape through a rear exit. Richard calmly pointed toward them. "That's the man who spent 30 years hunting your family." The suspect was arrested before reaching the door. As officers searched him, they discovered forged identities, surveillance records, and decades of evidence proving that my family had been watched because they believed my father had hidden documents exposing their criminal organization. But those documents had never been in our home. Richard had protected the real evidence all along. The package, the photographs, the key, everything had been part of a plan to bring the remaining criminals into the open once and for all. Weeks later, after the investigation was complete, the truth became public. The organization responsible for decades of corruption was dismantled. Emily returned home safely. For the first time in weeks, our family gathered around the same dining table, the same table where the mysterious Father's Day box had once sat. Eleanor smiled as she placed dinner in front of everyone. Emily reached across the table and held my hand. "I'm sorry you had to go through all this because of me." I gently shook my head. "No, we survived it together." She smiled through her tears. Then she handed me one final Father's Day gift. This time, it was just a simple picture frame. Inside was a new family photograph taken that morning. No secrets, no fear, no hidden messages. Just 3 smiling faces. I placed it beside the old faded photograph from decades ago. One reminded me of the lies that nearly destroyed our family. The other reminded me of the truth that finally brought us back together. Sometimes the greatest gift a father receives isn't wrapped inside a box. It's discovering that love, sacrifice, and family are stronger than fear, stronger than lies, and stronger than the past. And every Father's Day after that, whenever someone asked me what the best gift I had ever received was, I always gave the same answer. It wasn't the box. It was getting my daughter back and finally learning who my father truly was.